Hello everyone. Today's poem is Yong Wind from the Book of Songs. This poem looks quite simple, a bit childish at the first glance. But if you know the real history background, you will know that this poem is so sharp and keen. Just give you an example. If a scandal happened in a normal family, yeah, it's a scandal, and maybe everybody talk about that for a few days, and everybody forget it. But if that scandal happened in the harem, in the royal palace, what do you think about that? It might be a huge impact to the whole state, to the whole country, and that impact maybe last for some years, maybe some decades. And this poem actually has a strong impact to the state of Yong as well as state Wei, because we know that the three states, Bei state, Yong state, and Wei state, basically they are a mega state composed of three regions. When one of the Wei state lord passed away, one of his sons was asked to marry with his wife, the widow. So that's quite weird, right? Anyhow, this son, this prince, was not from that widow, because normally a state lord has several wives. So this prince, he was the lord of the Yong state at that time, and he was insisted to marry with his mother in name, right? Not his real mother, but in the title, in the code of conduct, that widow was his mother, the decent mother actually. But anyhow, they get married, and he has several sons. He has two sons, and one of the two daughters is quite famous in the later histories, because his two sons restored the Wei state, because the Wei state collapsed for quite a while, and his two sons restored the Wei state. So that's a big achievement for a state lord. And one of his daughter was the writer of a very, very famous patriotic poem in Yong Wind, the last poem in Yong Wind, 载池. This daughter was also a great contributor to restore the Wei state. So that's why their poems, their songs, was also kept and left till today. So the main reason that he married with his widow mother, one is because the widow's father, the father-in-law, insists this remarriage, because the marriage between states is always about political, it's about alliance. So if the remarriage doesn't happen, the widow will be useless to his father or the father-in-law of the Wei state, right? So the relationship between the Wei state and the Qi state will be weak or maybe totally lost. So that's the main reason that through the history, most of people believe so. And the second reason is the widow is quite capable to bring new babies. So that ability was approved. And the descendants, the prince, is a key to a state, to a country in that time. If you don't have a son, you don't have a prince, the state will get into a great danger or maybe even collapse by itself because the sovereignty, the rulings is based on the family, based on the bloodlines. If the bloodlines broke, how does the sovereignty, how does the regime continue? It's a big problem for a state. It might be the most important problem for a state. So this son married with his widow mother happened finally. And this poem reflects the views of that time, very likely by a senior officer, by a citizen in the Yong state. And this behavior actually happened several times during that period. And maybe this behavior has its traditions. It doesn't happen since this case. And this behavior has a very interesting name in Chinese. Zheng. Zheng basically is the describing the cooking method, to use the steam to cook the food. And because the steaming is go upward, so this term was used to describe this behavior because the sun is in a lower level, right? And the mating in ancient Chinese was described as the raindrops goes down and the dews was on the ground. So the raindrops and the dews is described as the mating between man and woman. And but because the sun was in a lower level, so he is making the raindrops upside down, not upside down, from the downside to upside, because the mother was on the upper level. So that was a very vivid comparison to this behavior, to this marriage. Let me rephrase this behavior again if you don't follow me. So the mating between a man and a woman was described as yun yu. So the rain drops was the sperm of a man. And the women was described as the clouds because the clouds was the water, the steam coming from the ground and go up. So the raindrops coming from the up downward and meet with the clouds finally. So finally the mating was complete, right? But because in this case, the widow is the mother and she has an upper level. The son was the man, he was with a lower level, right? So how could the two mate? Tell me, how could? So this behavior was described as a steaming. So the steaming is a cooking method to boil the water so the water steams go upward. So the steam in this case was paralleled, was compared to the sperm of a man, and the sperm go up, and finally the mating was finished and complete. So that's this case. Okay, let's get to the poem. The poem is quite simple, and we don't need to spend too much on the content. It's so simple if you know the history background. Let's focus on some of the characters and make sure you know these characters well. 强有词，不可扫也. The wall has grasses grow on it, and it cannot stop it. So the first sentence, 强有词, is the title as well, which actually is a metaphor that it's dirty, right? Or the housekeeping doesn't go well. Thus, there's some grass growing on your wall. So just imagine in the ancient time, the typical Chinese home, especially the palace of the state lord, they are surrounded by a thick and high wall. So as an average people, you can see nothing in the palace but the wall. But someday you saw a lot of grass growing on the wall. You know something abnormal happened in the palace. The housekeeping doesn't do his job. It's dirty. So it's also a metaphor to what happened in the palace, right? The son married with his widow mother. It's so dirty, right? Especially this happened in the palace. And the character 扫 today, it means to sweep. But in those days, or in this poem, it doesn't mean that. It means it's a barrier to stop the flood, the water flood. It's made of the branch of trees and bamboos. A lot of branch of bamboos and trees was tied together and to make it as a small wall. So let's think about the first sentence again. The palace is dirty. Something abnormal happened inside the palace that cannot be blocked. So which means everybody knows it, even it's a big and deep palace surrounded by high walls. We know it. 中冑之言，不可道也. The things, the words in the palace cannot be said, cannot be rephrased, or cannot be told on the streets, on the market. 中冑 means the a complex structure by the pillars, by the walls. So just look at this building in the Shanghai exhibition. This is it's not a typical Chinese structure, the buildings, but the method, the structuring method is, you can, from this picture, you know what is 中构, many pillars, many leveled logs. They comes up to make a very complicated Chinese type structures. So normally this means the center or inside the palace building. So within the palace, within the wall of the palace, there's still gardens and buildings. 中构 means the most secret, most hidden place in the palace. So here it means even those words, those things was told in the most hidden and the secret place in the palace. But everybody knows it today. But we are shameful to rephrase, to retelling those words told within the palace. It's so ugly, so shameful. 所可道也，言之丑也. But everybody was feeling so upset or shameful, right? You definitely you will say something. 所可道的. So the only thing we can talking around on the street is we just say it's so ugly and nothing else. We just say it's so ugly. We don't telling each other what happened in the palace. We don't rephrase. We don't repeat what was told within the palace because it's so shameful. And we just say it's so ugly. So basically the three paragraphs is all repeating these feelings, these situations. Let's see. The second paragraph. 强有词，不可襄也. So the first paragraph, 扫 is to block it. 襄 is to surround it. It's the same thing, right? If you can surround those ugly things, those ugly words within the palace, you will keep the secret, you will keep the scandal very well, right? So the second paragraph, 强有词，不可襄也 means even the grass was growing on your walls. Maybe that grass make the wall looks much higher, right? But you cannot surround those scandals, those ugly words, to close up those things within the palace. Okay, 中构之言不可详也. So the words told within the palace cannot be detailed, cannot be should not be detailed, repeat or rumored. 所可详也，言之长也. So the only thing you can talk about, you can get to some of the details of that is we just say it's so long. So long could be with two meanings. First thing first, the scandal happened for such a long time. It repeated for such a long time. The ugly words spoken within the palace was so long. We feel so shameful of those words. We cannot fully repeat it on the street because the words is so ugly. Okay, the third paragraph. 强有词，不可束也。The grass growing on the walls, it cannot be wrapped up. So normally, for average family, for daily life, the Asian Chinese will cut and wrap a lot of the grass to eat, to use it as a fuel, right? But the grass on the ground cannot be wrapped up. And here the metaphor is those ugly words, those ugly sentences cannot be wrapped up. It finally leaked out to the public, to the society. The character du is a loan word of du. Du means leakage, especially for the water leaked out. And in the ancient time, the three major rivers goes to the ocean was so called as 四渡. So that's what's the four major rivers in the China. The Yellow River, the Yangtze River, the Ji River, and the Huai River. And today, the Ji River vanished. So there's no more four leakages. 四渡. Okay, the last sentence. 所可读也，言之辱也. The only thing could be leaked out to the public, to the state, is just say it. It's a shame. It's an insultation. So basically, this is the poem. So if you don't know the background, this poem is quite simple and maybe it's nothing, right? But if you know it's something about the royal palace, about the state lord, about the harem, it's something huge. And the fury and the shame that the public, the people feels is also huge. And just be careful with the words. This poem is quite simple. The first paragraph, 扫, the blockage. The second paragraph, 相, to surrounding. To the third paragraph, 度, the leakage. And also the character, go, right? Just look at the character. Do you feel the complex structure by a wood log, cross and vertical, right? Just look at the picture. So this picture definitely is a logogram, right? It simulates the very original Chinese building structures. Okay, that's for today. Bye-bye.